Hi everyone, I am so happy to be with you today. Talking about a topic that might seem kind of boring, but I think I can make come alive for you. And here's what it is. We're going to be talking about the archaeology of 20,000 to 5,000 years ago, and it is a time of revolutions. We are going to talk about 3 changes that changed everything, and some reasons why that still matters today. So first of all, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take out a piece of paper. Yes, an actual piece of paper, not your smartphone, not your laptop. Take out a piece of paper and a pen or a crayon. I don't care, something to write with. And I'm not kidding. I actually want you to take out a piece of paper right now. Are you doing it? Are you taking out the piece of paper? Take out the piece of paper. Okay, now I want you to write down everything you did today. And you can pause the video. I assume it's going to take you a couple minutes, but write down at least all the major things that you did today, okay? Did you pause the video? Okay, good. Now, look at your list, and I want you to cross out everything that involved reading or writing. So anything that was part of your day, check an email, texting is the way a normal person would say that. Getting a bill in the mail, anything that in any way involved reading or writing, cross it out. And then I want you to cross out everything in your day that involved a law. So that means like if you were driving on the road, that involved laws, because if there weren't laws, driving on the road would be effectively impossible. So cross out anything that had to do with a law. For that matter, if you spend time in a rented apartment, or some other kind of rental property, I want you to cross that out as well, because that's kind of a manifestation of our legal and economic system. I also want you to cross out anything that involved a large organization. Did you go to campus today? Did you go to a hospital today? Did you go to a library today? Did you interact with some kind of government official today? Anything with a large organization, cross that stuff out. And now I want you to cross out everything that involved mechanical technology, any sort of computer, any sort of car or vehicle, any sort of indoor heating, any sort of indoor plumbing, all of that, cross it out. And finally, I want you to cross out everything that involved a stranger. So if you went to the store and you bought something and you interacted with a teller and they're not your best friend, but just some rando that you handed all your money to in the form of a credit card, I want you to cross that out. And by the way, cross out the credit card too, because that's basically just a little card that says strangers are letting me have money. And now I want you to finally cross out everything that involved pets or gardens. You hung out with your cat today, cross it out. Okay? Now I want you to tell me how many things are left on your list. And you can't actually tell me that because this is a recorded lecture. It is impossible for you to tell me anything. So just like yell it out to the void, I guess. And that'll be fun at various different asynchronous times. Now the reason I had you cross all these things out is because all of the things we just talked about, pets, gardens, mechanical technology, formal legal systems, large organizations, reading, writing, and large social groups where you regularly interact with strangers, all of those things are the direct results of changes that have happened in human society in about the last 15,000 years. Things that have to do with what we sometimes call the Neolithic Revolution. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So although this might seem like just some randomly chosen period of time, it's not. This is arguably the most important time in all of human history that we're talking about today. That period of time between 20,000 and 5,000 years ago is again that time period of the Neolithic Revolution. So we're going to talk today about what that meant, and we're going to talk about some of the major manifestations of that. But we're actually going to kind of start small with change number 1, the first really huge major change that we see about 15,000 years ago. And you're going to like this if you're a pet owner. And if you're not a pet owner, what's wrong with you? Just kidding. I'm not a pet owner either. But the first change about 15,000 years ago, as far as we can tell, is the early domestication of dogs and cats. My son has this adorable game where he pretends, because at some point I explained to him that I think my wife explained this to him, but that we had domesticated wolves to become dogs, and so now he has this adorable game where he like pretends like somebody's a wolf and then like gives them food and then they become a dog instantly. Of course, that's not how it happened, right? The process of turning wolves into dogs was a very long process, but at the end of the day, dogs and wolves are essentially the same species. In fact, depending on which scientist you ask, a lot of scientists will call them just different subspecies. species of the same thing. So you have Canis lupus, i.e. the gray wolf, and Canis lupus familiaris, aka the dog, the domestic dog. And this is kind of a funny meme, right? I'm going to get close to this group of humans. What's the worst that can happen? Thousands of years later, we're strapping a birthday hat to this dog. And that's, kind of silly, but kind of what actually happened. About 15,000 years ago, we start to see evidence, for example, of humans being buried with, well, are they wolves or dogs? Well, it's hard to tell from the fossil record. But at the very least, they're being buried with canines, and that's kind of our first evidence of humans starting to domesticate dogs. And it appears that at first that would have been a mutually beneficial relationship, as far as they would have benefited from some of the protection and food provided by humans. Humans would have benefited from the fact that dogs could have also provided some protection as well as hunting assistance. And so humans and wolves, in a sense, co-evolved together. And if you're interested in that concept, I recommend Donna Haraway, who's a rather famous feminist scholar, but also famous for her work called the Companion Species Manifesto, where she talks about the radical ways in which we transformed domestic species and they transformed us, to the point where nowadays you have people with shirts like this, right? My grandkids have paws, which, whatever your thoughts on, quote, fur babies and the idea of pets as children, either way, it attests to the fact that we have so dramatically integrated a wild animal into our social spheres that it can now be thought of in a very meaningful way as part of human society, right? We take these animals to specialized doctors, we celebrate their birthdays, we mourn when they die. They are part of our social relationships, right? We cannot think of human society as really just humans. It's human plus cat plus dog plus whatever society. By the way, if you're curious, cats were probably domesticated about 8,000 years ago, whereabouts of Egypt. And so that's cool. And cats obviously offered some advantages as well, such as controlling pests and being frickin' adorable and purring. You can tell I'm a cat person by how I'm framing that. Now, the domestication of dogs and cats might seem like a big deal, might seem like a small deal. Maybe depends on how strongly you feel about pets. But I want you to think about it as sort of the harbinger of things to come. It's a huge deal, because what we're talking about now is we're talking about human beings who, at least according to the physical anthropology record, hominins for thousands of years, largely shaped by their environment and by the demands of their environment and by trying to adapt to their environment. And suddenly, hominins, in this case Homo sapiens, are turning around and saying, you know what, nature? We're going to start controlling things. We're going to start controlling things quite dramatically. And so we're actually now, it's not just modifying our own lives, right? Not just modifying our own evolution through our cultural changes, but modifying the evolution of other organisms. Humans are starting to have control over other organisms, and we see sort of the dramatic effects of that 15,000 years later, where right now approximately half of the global landmass is occupied and or controlled by human beings for our needs, and where we've really modified even the most remote parts of the globe with the different ways that we've modified the environment. But it all started, right, with things like domesticating dogs, domesticating cats, gaining control of fire, like we talked about last time. So crazy, huge change that changed everything.